Hello, welcome to another video for the manuscript readings. In this episode, we're going to go through the manuscripts that were collected after the other collection of manuscripts that we've gotten, and we're just going to go through and see what they have to say. If you are not interested in that, please go ahead and move on to the next video, the one that takes place after this. If you are interested, please continue to stay on and we'll go through it. But if not, I'll see you in the next one. All right. So let's check out the manuscripts here. Episode 2 taken. We did the first few, and it looks like we missed a few pages. That was probably during the driving sequence that I didn't get out of the car. I didn't know I could get out of the car, but I guess if I missed 3, it's not that big of a deal. And it looks like we stopped here because this question mark here says it's unread, so... Barry doubts Wake's sanity.
Barry had never gotten along with Alice, but he knew Alan loved her with an almost frightening intensity. And now something had happened to Alice. And here was Al armed with a gun and saying things people got put in padded cells for. It was as if his friend had experienced a massive psychotic episode and was now totally disconnected from reality. It scared the shit out of Barry.
Yeah, for real. If that was actually a friend of yours and they had a gun and stuff and they were never that type of person, yeah, that would be cause for concern.
The air in the visitor center was heavy with an awful smell, as if some rotten drowned thing had crawled up from its grave. Rusty kept coughing blood. My eyes were drawn to the twisted shape of his broken leg. The attack had been vicious. Max whined in his cage. Rusty's eyes were wild with fear and terror. He gasped. "Mr. Wake, it happened just the way it was on that page."
Yep, that's how when we came in and we found him in the visitor center, just like near death. Rusty attacked by the dark presence. Oh, this is just like when what was his name? The guy who we're supposed to get the keys for the cabin from? Stucky. Yeah, Stucky got attacked by the dark presence before he got possessed too.
The visitor center was sturdy, but the impact turned the front of the building into splinters. Rusty was thrown across the lobby like a rag doll and hit the far wall hard. It didn't hurt until he tried to move and saw his leg bend the wrong way, felt the broken ribs stabbing him on the inside. Rusty howled in pain and fear, suddenly afraid to die alone.
Whoa. Oh, I can't imagine. I'm sure people go through stuff like that, but I can't imagine being on the receiving end of something like that. Wake reaches a safe haven of light.
At the last instant, I changed direction and threw myself down. The axe splintered the trunk of a tree. I stumbled into the pool of bright light. My lungs burned. I was too exhausted to move. I tensed as I waited for the killing blow, but it never came. I raised my head. Nothing moved in the darkness beyond. For the moment, bathed in the cold light, I was safe.
Yep. Yeah, we're safe in the light. I think we kind of figured that gameplay mechanic, but that's nice that they put it into the quote-unquote book, too. Rusty's final thoughts.
In that last instant of consciousness, Rusty thought about Rose. He was older than she was. Rose was barely out of her teens, but she made him feel young and forget what a train wreck his long-dead marriage had been. He still wore the ring. He'd been waiting for her to tell him to take it off. Now she never would.
Man, that sucks. I wonder how old Rusty was. If she was barely out of her teens, she might have been too young for you, dude. Wake sees the torch symbol.
I turned the corner, afraid of what the flashlight's beam might reveal. Suddenly, a roughly painted symbol of a torch glowed in the light. Behind it, hidden by a rock, sat a battered metal trunk. It was here for a reason, packed with supplies, batteries, flares, ammo, things you need to make it through the darkness of the night. Something left behind by someone who knew what I knew, and more.
That's eerie. It's a nice way of adding a story mechanic, or a gaming mechanic into a story. Nightingale's arrival. That's the FBI agent.
Agent Nightingale didn't want to be in Bright Falls. These little communities revolted him, and he didn't like the trees or the coffee. He now knew that impossible horrors lurked behind the storefronts and smiles. He desperately wanted to turn the car around and just drive until he passed out or ran out of road and booze. But he had a job to do. He had a rider to catch, at any cost.
Ooh. looks like he already suspects Alan of doing something wrong. Uh, yeah, he must be really, really jaded at this point for him to think this way. Alice's fear of the
On more
dark.
than one occasion, Alice had tried to explain to me how it felt to be afraid of the dark. To her, darkness wasn't simply the absence of light, but something more tangible than that. It was something you could touch and feel. Worse than that, it was something with a mind of its own, something malicious and malign. For her, things changed when they were wrapped in darkness. They turned into something else, something foreign. And nothing was safe or innocent anymore. I'd never really understood what she meant, until now.
For real, this is like we're experiencing it from her point of view. Like all the darkness and stuff. It's really getting to us. And then like the only safe havens are the lights. That is the definition of what she's going through. Wake here's a chainsaw. Ugh. Kind of reminds me of Resident Evil 4. With
The
that
night had
guy.
been one desperate situation after another. I was exhausted, and my body felt as though it had been chewed up and spat out. The flashlight was heavy in my hand, and each pull of the trigger sent a painful shock up my arm. But I was finally out of the woods, and things were looking up. That's when I heard the chainsaw.
Dun dun dun. Barry in Elderwood.
When Barry saw the darkness attack the visitor center, it made him a believer. The men Al said he'd shot, they hadn't been just locals on crank. Somehow the world had changed, like the channel had been switched without warning. You think you're watching a sitcom, and you're really watching a horror show. When the birds started attacking the cabin, Barry wasn't surprised, just terrified.
Yeah. Have any of you watched the movie The Birds from Alfred Hitchcock? Yeah, it's kind of like that. But yeah, Barry is a believer now. Uh, That's that's good that at least he's on Alan's side. Nightingale fires at Wake. What? He
The
shoots at
FBI
us?
agent's command froze me in place. I considered surrender. It was all falling apart anyway. I could give in, let someone else deal with it, but it felt all wrong. Call it instinct, his posture, the way he held the gun. He was no friend. Shots ringing in my ears, I leaped for the hole in the fence and stumbled into the darkness beyond.
Oh, that's definitely foreshadow for the next episode. Goodness. Rose and Rusty.
Rose knew that Rusty was in love with her, and she liked him too. She liked him a lot. He taught her to dance, and life had certainly taught her the value of a man who was gentle. He treated her well, made her smile, made her feel good. But Rusty wasn't the prince of her dreams, and that tended to underline the unbearable truth. She was no closer to that Hollywood magic than he was.
I understand wanting to wait for the right person to come along and sweep you off your feet and stuff like that. That's great, but I mean, how often does that really happen? You can give people a chance, right? Sarah thinks about Wake. Oh, this is the sheriff.
Sarah didn't care about the legal threats Wake's agent had made. She let Wake go without argument, because there was something about him she couldn't quite put her finger on, something that reminded her of her father. She didn't think Wake would hurt his wife. Then she thought about the way he waded into Hartman, that hair-trigger rage flaring up without warning.
Yeah, that's when we punched that doctor. Yeah, that made her think, wait, maybe he could go into a berserker rage. Deputies at the logging site.
The logging site was a mess. The modular office had been pushed off the cliff. Deputy Thornton climbed up from the wreckage excited, breathing hard from the exertion. Nobody there. It's weird. Don't you think that's weird? Bored, Mulligan let out a mighty snort. Hell, it's always weird, Thornton. Just a question of sorting out what kind of weird it is this time around.
Wow, they really don't seem to be fazed by the weirdness that's happening. I mean, it's a small town. Who would think that this kind of weirdness happens? We were in that modular office when it was going over the edge. It's crazy that the one guy's like, "Oh, it's weird," and then the other guy's like, "Yeah, they're all weird, but what kind of weird is it?" Jeez, did we get anything? Yeah, we didn't get anything here. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff. Okay, only 3 things for hard mode. All right. We are done with the manuscript readings. And so, if you joined me for this, thank you. I'm glad that I'm not the only one who enjoys the lore and the backstory and stuff like that. It really does give you a lot of insight into what's going on and puts things into perspective. I really enjoy that, especially for like a very rich story. You want to understand what's going on. But if you like this, obviously you'll want to come back for the gameplay because that's how the story advances. So, with that in mind, I hope to see you in the next one. And until then, bye.